So welcome everyone. I'm very glad you're joining us. We have Justin, Joe, and Mike from Empire Flippers joining us in this webinar today. It is going to be a very exciting webinar. I think something that a lot of people don't consider in this space is that they are building an asset with their FBA business. It is something that can be sold. And these guys today are going to tell us all about what we need to be thinking about if we want to do something, if we want to sell our business, how to get ready for that, what kind of multiples we can expect, as well as some other good information. So with that being said, I will turn it over to you guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. Really appreciate it. My name is, for anyone who doesn't know, Justin Cook. I'm one of the partners here. My business partner's on as well, though his internet's a little slower, so he's going to stay off for the most part. His name's Joe Magnotti. I'm here with our marketplace manager, Mike Rankovich. What's going on, buddy?
Hi, guys.
So we're going to be covering quite a bit of information in this webinar. A bunch of things we want to get through. Mostly it's going to be slides, so we're going to switch over to slides in just a minute. Just wanted to show you that we're real people. We're here and saying hi from Thailand. So let's switch over to these slides and we'll kind of get into everything. Awesome.
All right, we can see them. They look good.
Great. So we're talking exit strategy, how to sell your Amazon business for maximum profit. Now, even if you don't plan on selling your FBA business, it's still really important to understand how businesses are valuated, how much they're worth, to think about it from a buying perspective. Because whether you sell next week, next month, next year, or a couple of years from now, your situation may get to the point where you want to know how much it's worth. You may want to exit your business for a bunch of different reasons. So we're going to actually talk about how you value the businesses. Before we do that, let's talk about who we are. My name is Justin Cook. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer, also a partner at a company called Empire Flippers. I'm here with Mike Rankovich, as I mentioned earlier, our marketplace manager.
Yeah, and one important thing to keep in mind, even if you decide to never sell your business, some of the things that we talked about today will be useful for you to implement in terms of growing your business.
Yeah, it's definitely worth making your business worth more, more profitable, cutting down expenses that are unnecessary. And these are some of the things we're going to cover. In fact, to tell you a little bit about us, our main goal at Empire Flippers, we help others buy, sell, and invest in online businesses. Greg said earlier that a lot of people don't think about their business as an asset. They think about it as a business that makes money. They want to make more money. They're going to grow it and add new products and things. But they don't realize that these are, buyable and sellable assets, right? There are people out there looking to buy FBA businesses just like the FBA businesses you're creating. In fact, we're on track to sell about $10 million worth of online businesses in 2016. In fact, we've already sold 11 FBA businesses in 2016, 10 of those in the last 6 months. And those range anything from $50,000 on the small end to $1.5 million on the high end. So there's a pretty wide range of FBA businesses that we're selling this year. This is relatively new because FBA is only a few years old and we lag the market. So as brokers, it takes a couple of years before people build up the type of business that they're in a position to sell. So we're just now starting to see a lot of these FBA businesses hit the market, and there's huge interest on the buy side to buy FBA businesses right now. All right, so in this webinar, we really want to help you answer 3 questions. There are 3 things we really want to cover. The first being, how are FBA businesses valued? It's easy to have kind of a dollar amount in your mind, but if you're pulling that from thin air, that's not terribly helpful. It may be disappointing if you find out your business is worth a lot less. It may be pretty exciting to find out your business is worth a lot more. So we're going to give you a framework you can use to determine the value of your business, and you can use this at any time. The second thing is we want to talk about how to maximize the value of an FBA business. How can it be worth more in 3 months, and 6 months, and 9 months, and 12 months? Maybe you're not planning on selling today, but you want the option to sell later. We want to give you that option. And the third question we want to answer is we want to answer the process for selling an FBA business. What are the steps you take to sell an FBA business from start to finish? All right, so the first thing we want to cover are valuations on an FBA business. So there's a really simple formula here. Valuation equals the monthly net profit times a multiple plus inventory at cost. And we're gonna cover what each one of these points mean in just a minute.
And this formula might seem a little bit intimidating at first, but like Justin said, we'll break down each part of the formula, so it'll make a lot more sense.
All right, so the first thing let's talk about is monthly net profit. What does that mean exactly? It's basically taking a 12-month average of your monthly net profit for the business. So that would be revenue minus cost of goods sold, minus expenses, and then you break that out on average per month. So let's say, for example, that in the last 12 months total, you brought in $240,000 worth of profit. Right, that's going to give you $20,000 a month in net profit on average. Now, some months maybe you did 15, another month you did 25, so it varies. But we're taking a 12-month average, and that's ideal. Now, sometimes you'll see, if you look at our marketplace, you'll see that we use a 3-month or a 6-month average. And so we get the question, well, when do we use a 3-month average or a 6-month average? Well, the thing is, we'll use that when the business is in a really high growth phase. So for example, let's say that in the last 3 months, you made on average a profit $20,000 a month. But 12 months ago, you're only doing like $4,000 a month. Well, that was so long ago, that's not very indicative of where your business is today, right? So we don't want to take a 12-month average. Same thing is for a business that's heavily declined. Let's say you were doing $20,000 a month 12 months ago, and you're only doing $4,000 a month today. Now, a buyer is not going to give you value on what your business was doing 12 months ago if it was significantly higher than it is today. They want to look at the most recent information. So we'll only use a 3 or 6 month average if it's like high growth or high decline. And we'd be very careful because we can't do it, and as much as FBA guys would love to, we can't do it in January on a 3-month average. So everyone's like, oh, I crushed it in November, December. Can I use my November, December numbers? Well, no, because we have to extrapolate a 12-month average. People are looking like annually, not like how you just crushed it over the holiday season.
Yeah, pretty much the average that we choose, it should be what a buyer would expect to make on a monthly basis going forward.
Yeah, so and the other thing is, people ask, well, look, if I take a trip to Tahiti, right, is that in my expenses? Is that taken out of my monthly net profit? Because if that's taken out, that means your business is worth less, right? Well, that depends, right? So a lot of us as business owners, we have some interesting business expenses, right? So we take trips to Tahiti, we buy, ski-doos or whatever we end up buying as part of the business expense, which isn't necessarily a requirement. So a good way to think about it is if you're going to Tahiti on vacation, maybe you talk a little bit of business, for your accounting purposes. That's not going to count against you. If you're going to China to visit your supplier, that probably is going to count against you. That is going to have to be taken out of your monthly net profit. So this is all a negotiation point, but in general, we can take add backs. We'll take out your salary. So if you're paying yourself a salary, that's a count as monthly net profit. That's not going to count against you. Only things that are absolutely required to maintain the business will count against your monthly net profit. Does that make sense? All right, so let's move on to the next thing. Monthly net profit times a multiple, right? And here's this like mythical, magical multiple. People ask us a lot. They're like, well, what's the multiple range? The multiple range is anywhere from 20 times to 40 times and up, right? So in the previous example I used, let's say that you on the last 12 months, you averaged $20,000 a month in profit. You're looking at your business being worth somewhere between $400,000 at 20x to $800,000 on 40x multiple. Now that's a huge difference. I'd much rather sell my business for $800,000 than $400,000. What's up with that? And how do I get the higher multiple? Well, here's what comes into play. So for larger multiples, if your business has a longer track record, if it's been around longer.
Yes. So if you compare two businesses, the one that's been around for 4 years will typically command a higher multiple than the one that's been around for 1 year.
It's got more longevity. It's just proven itself more. It seems less risky from a buyer's perspective, especially if it's had growth month over month or year over year over the last 4 years. Another thing is when we use a 12-month average, you're likely to get a better multiple because it's gone through an entire season. Right? Especially for FBA, the Christmas season is important to see like not just what it does during the hot months, but what it does during the slow months. And once we've got a full 12-month average, you're going to get a better multiple. If we're forced to use a 3 or 6 month average because of high growth or high decline, you're likely going to get a smaller multiple because of that. Another thing that commands a higher multiple is just having a bigger business. So in general, a $800,000 FBA business is going to be at a higher multiple than a $200,000 or $100,000 FBA business. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's just more to it. Like there's normally more SKUs. It's a more robust business rather than a singular product focused business. The more robust businesses just command larger multiples in general. So the bigger it gets, the bigger the multiple. That's why when you're growing your business, not only are you growing your net profit, but holding on to it longer and having it get bigger and bigger improves your multiple. So, not only improving net profit, you're also improving your multiple over time.
So Justin, one of the questions we have is, what if your business is like less than a year old? And are you saying that that's still a sellable asset, you just expect a smaller multiple?
It is, because we can't use a full 12 months of history. So that's going to cut down our multiple a little bit because we just don't have the 12 months, right? And the fact that it's a newer business, you're going to get a smaller multiple. So you're much more, let's say that it's a 9-month-old FBA business, kind of a single product, or maybe you got 2 or 3 products, you're looking much closer to the 20 to 24x range.
Yeah, and I would say whether you can sell it, the short answer is it depends. If it's been around for 1 year, but it only started making money the last 2 months, then you probably can't sell it. If it started making money right out of the gate and you have a 9 or 10 or 12 month track record, then it's something that's sellable.
I'd really recommend at least 6 months of track record of earnings.
So steady earnings.
Yeah. So if we can get 6 months of earnings, you're going to have a much better opportunity to sell. And this is something that we actually flesh out for you in the vetting process. When we take a look at businesses, we won't take on businesses we don't think we have a good chance at selling. So we actually would reject businesses that didn't kind of meet our criteria and that wasn't a good fit for our buyers.
Cool. Thanks.
All right, so the last bit is inventory at cost. When we talk about inventory at cost, we're talking about landed costs. We're talking about, landed, all the shipping, all the packing, all the fees included, what it costs to land in the US. And sometimes we get people that go, look, I've got 3 years worth of inventory. Isn't that helpful? Can I sell for a bit more? Well, keep in mind, this is landed cost. So you're not marking it up. You're not getting a profit on this deal. So if you stock up with inventory right before you sell, that's not really going to help you. In fact, it can be scary from a buyer's perspective. Like they don't know that the inventory you stocked up with isn't dead inventory. Right. So if you've got a whole bunch of inventory, you're like, oh, I got all this inventory. It's great. It'd be easy transition. Well, that's not helpful if that inventory is not selling anymore. It sucks, but as a seller, if you've got all this inventory that's no longer moving, you've got years worth or decades worth, doesn't help you. In fact, buyers aren't willing to buy that inventory off of you. A good rule of thumb is maybe 5 to 20% of the sales price. If you're selling your business for $200,000 and you've got $20,000 worth of inventory, that's a reasonable amount.
Correct. If you have significantly more inventory, it'll be something that'll come up in the negotiation process, and you'll probably have to take a discount on that inventory. The
other thing is you want to make sure you do have enough inventory. It can be really difficult or challenging to transfer a business when you're running out of inventory at the very end. So, what we don't want to do is we don't want to be transferring this business to the new buyer and they run out of inventory and now they want a discount because they, lost sales. And you want to make sure you have enough, but not too much. So 5 to 20% is a pretty reasonable range. All right, so we got a pretty good example on kind of valuation. Again, it's monthly net profit times a multiple, usually between 20 to 40, plus inventory at cost. So we got a pretty good example. I'm going to have Mike run through a couple of FBA sales that we had this year. So these are actual real examples of FBA businesses we sold, and we'll kind of go through the details.
Sure. So both of these examples are actually from the last 60 days. The first example we'll go over now, it was a product in the beauty niche. It sold for a 22x multiple. The sales price was $500,000. It was making just a bit under $23,000 a month. The business was 1 year old, and what we used for our time frame for pricing the business, we used the 5-month average.
And that's because you really only had a good 5 months of history.
Correct.
In terms of earnings.
So the first 7 months, it was slowly ramping up, and then the last 5 months, it really picked up and maintained that level and grew a bit month over month. This specific business only had 1 SKU, and it only sold on Amazon US. However, one thing that this business had going for itself, and that really helped us sell it, the seller had 5 new SKUs ready to launch. So he received the samples. He had a plan on how to launch them.
So 22x multiple is on the lower end of the range, right? So let's talk about why that happened. First off, only 12 months of history, right? So it almost only started 12 months ago. It's still relatively new from a buyer's perspective. There's a bit more risk there than a 3 or 4 year old business. 5 months of average monthly net profit. That's not even a full season. That's, again, more risk. There's one SKU involved. And even though there are a few new SKUs ready to launch, there's only one. And it was only Amazon US. So like one channel is a bit more risky too. So that's something to do with a lower multiple. Can't fault the seller though, because look, you create a business making $23,000 a month in profit inside of 12 months. You did something good. You're doing pretty well. So it's not so bad. A $500,000 payday inside 12 months, not too shabby. So let's look at the second example.
So the second example was in the outdoor sports niche. This one sold for a 30x multiple. The sales price was $1.5 million, and it was making just a bit over $50,000 a month in net profit. This one was just a bit over 2 years old, about 25 months. And for pricing this one, we used a 12-month average. This one had 20 SKUs. They were all loosely related. They were all in the same niche, same target audience, but ranking for different keywords. And this one actually sold in Amazon US, UK, and Germany. And one important thing to note, the sales were roughly equal from those 3 different channels.
So let's talk about this. The last one we said was a 22x multiple. This one's a 30x multiple. Here's the difference. On a 22x multiple, if this one would have went for 22, we'd be talking about $1.1 million sales price. So it's a $400,000 difference. Here's what made that $400,000 difference. The fact that this one was 25 months old instead of 12-month-old business. The fact that we use a 12-month average instead of a 5-month average. We had the full 12 months we could use. It had 20 SKUs instead of just one. And it also had multiple channels, Amazon US, Amazon UK, and Germany. So that made the buy much more attractive. So inside of 2 years, you've got an Amazon FBA business owner that created and then sold his business for $1.5 million, crushing it. So really, really good job there. All right, so that should help you or give you some idea in terms of valuations. We've actually got a tool that we're going to share with you at the end. It's a free tool you can use to get a pretty rough idea on valuation for your business. All you have to do is plug in your numbers, and it'll give you a pretty good idea. So if you're looking for that, we'll share that with you a little bit later. Let's answer the second question, which is how to maximize the value of your FBA business. So you've got this FBA business. You go, that's awesome. I want to make more money, or I want my business to be worth more. What do I do? These are the things you're going to do. We've got a few bullet points here. We're going to go through each of them. But basically, you're going to want a separate company for the business you're selling. You're going to need detailed financials. You're going to want to minimize your work required. You're going to want to minimize buyer risks. You're not going to want to touch inventory. We're going to talk about what that means. And then you're going to want people and process in place. So, all right, first thing, let's talk about a separate company. Ideally, in a perfect world, an ideal world, you're selling your entire business under one LLC or one corporation. So all the products, all the product lines in your FBA business, it's all going to be going through one LLC. Ultimately, any sale that you do with us is an asset sale, not a stock sale. What that means, there's some tax implications there, but what that really means for you is that as a seller, any liabilities are not getting passed on to the buyer. They're simply buying the assets and the goodwill. So they're buying your product, they're buying your rank on Amazon, they're buying your benefit, your goodwill on Amazon. That's what's being bought. You're going to want to make sure that you have a separate business bank account. Ideally, you have a separate bank account that shows all the sales for the products that you're selling, nothing else. So you're not using it for your personal piggy bank. You're not using it for your personal bank account. It's just for the business and the products you're selling.
So one perfect example we can use here. Let's say Greg wanted to sell jungle sticks at one point. In the ideal best case scenario, jungle sticks would be completely separate. It would be owned by a different LLC. It would be a separate Amazon account, and it would be a separate bank account. However, like Justin said, This is not required. This is the best case scenario.
My guess is, Greg, I don't know, you can tell me, but it's probably not that way. You probably don't have a separate LLC set up for Jungle Sticks.
I actually set up a new LLC, but it doesn't have a separate bank account. But maybe I should do that now in case I want to sell.
You could separate it out. And that's ultimately what we do for a lot of sellers is we wish it was this way, but it is what it is. So let's dig into it and separate out the financials. It's more of a pain in our butts. It's a pain in your butt. And it can be a little confusing for buyers. The reason it's better to have it already done, separate bank account, separate LLC, is for clarity. Like you get a certain number of buyers that are looking to buy your business. If it's confusing or it's kind of hard to parse, and there's another business they're looking at that's easier, so you have another person that's selling that has much more clear bank accounts and clear financials, they may just skip yours just because it's confusing to them, right? And so they look at the one that's more legible. So that's one of the reasons that you want to have this done and have your I's dotted and your T's crossed.
Yeah, so I mean, anyone listening to this right now, if you are considering it, it's like, well, why don't you go ahead and set up a different LLC or a different bank account now? Then you'll be ready. You'll have the option for it, in a year or 6 months or whatever.
Definitely for the ones you want to sell. And the second thing we want to talk about is detailed financials. So two things you really need: an income statement and a cash flow statement. You're going to want to, and this is again all ideal. You're using some kind of accounting software. So using either QuickBooks or Xero. That's something that you can have a bookkeeper run for you. And then the last piece is COGS, are the number of units sold times the landed cost. I'll have you talk about that, Mike.
Sure. So this is actually a common question that we get from a lot of sellers. They'll ask us how our FBA business is valued, what kind of accounting system is used. So when we talk about the expenses, specifically cost of goods sold, we'll value them on an accrual basis. So it'll be the number of units sold multiplied by the landed cost. So let's say you order 1,000 units, but you only sell 300 units in the first month. For cost, it'll be only those 300 units multiplied by the landed cost. So that's what we use in the valuation. However, at the same time, we still need to show the buyer a complete picture of what those cash flows look like. So the best way of doing this is to use some kind of accounting software and have all of this be tracked.
Yeah, because we want to show the months where you were down because you had to order a bunch of inventory, so they know where you're at with cash flow. They need to know what the landed costs are and how many items you sold, so they can see month over month what their average profit is. So they actually need to see both.
Greg, does your tool do any of this?
Yeah, so our new tool, Fetcher, would be perfect for someone who's thinking about selling their business, because it would give a potential buyer an accurate rundown of how much money they spend on promotions and pay-per-click, all your expenses, including COGS, as well as if you're using software in your business and all that kind of stuff. So if you are thinking about it, Fetcher is like a great tool to give a potential buyer an accurate screenshot of how the business is doing.
That's cool. We could probably talk to you guys or your guys or whatever about this afterwards too, to give an even clearer picture in terms of information buyers would need to potentially purchase. So yeah, that'd be cool.
Excellent.
All right, man. So next piece I want to look at is work required. So here's something you want to do. Whenever you can cut expenses, that's fantastic. Right. So if you're able to cut out some expenses, that's going to improve your net profit, which improves your valuation. So if you can go from making $20,000 a month in profit, and you've got like maybe $2,000 or $3,000 worth of spend that you can get rid of and get yourself to $22,000, $23,000, great. What you don't want to do is you don't want to add any work. So a bad example of cutting expenses and adding work would be moving third-party fulfillment in-house, right? So you used to do it in a company where you had some costs. Now you're going to move it into your garage, and you're going to be the one packing, shipping, doing all that. No. That's bad, because there are a lot of buyers that are like, look, I got a job, or I own multiple online businesses. I'm not gonna be packing the stuff out of my garage. I'd rather have the costs and give you a higher multiple for using a third-party company.
And this is really important, even if it doesn't take a lot of time. Like let's say we're talking about removal orders, and it's something that you do once a month or every couple of months, and it only takes you a couple hours to have it shipped to your house. In terms of selling the business, you're in a much better position if you use third-party service to handle that.
Now, a good example of having expenses and keeping those in place would be customer service questions handled by VAs. So you're not doing the work. You have templates and FAQs that your virtual assistants are able to use. So it cuts down the work you're doing. Again, it's not terribly expensive, totally worth it because it improves your buyer pool. And that's ultimately what you're looking to do. You want more potential buyers looking at your business to purchase. Both it makes it more sellable, but also gives you a higher likelihood of selling for a higher price, right? All right, so let's talk about minimizing buyer risk. When you're looking to sell your business, you're thinking about how much your business is worth. You need to take off your kind of sales hat because it's easy to say, oh, I'm worth so much. I put all this blood, sweat, and tears into it. Buyers don't care about that. They don't care about your blood, sweat, and tears. They're looking at it as an investment. So one of the things they look at is they look at the single points of failure. Where could this business fail? Is it one SKU? What if the supplier increases the price? Well, the supplier goes out of business. Well, the supplier shuts me down. What if Amazon US shuts me down? What if I lose my account? There are all these different single points of failure they're looking at. So on a good point, like it makes your business more valuable and more sellable is to have multiple SKUs. So you're not stuck with just one particular product. You have multiple suppliers lined up. Maybe you use one more than another, but they can all supply the products. You've got multiple traffic or sales channels. So it's not just one traffic or sales channel that you're always using. So limiting your single points of failure makes the business more valuable. Bad would be having a single SKU only one supplier, all Amazon US. You're being the only person that can answer questions.
And let's briefly touch on multiple SKUs. So having multiple SKUs that are size or color variations is better than having one SKU. But ideally, you want to have multiple SKUs that are targeting different keywords. And if you look at it from minimizing risk from a buyer's perspective, they're thinking about, okay, what happens if more competition comes in for this exact niche? What happens if I lose rankings? It won't impact the earnings as much. Same idea with suppliers. Having a list of suppliers that you've contacted and received prices from is good, but even better is actually placing a test order or two from those suppliers and having a track record that you can show, look, I've ordered from this other supplier, the quality is the same, the defect rates have not gone up. This is a viable option.
Yeah, it's a much more attractive purchase from a buyer's perspective. So again, when you're thinking about selling and we're thinking about like how to improve your value in your business, take off your FBA seller hat, put on a potential buyer hat, and think about how could I get screwed in this deal, right? So that's really what buyers are thinking. In what ways could I lose value? Could the business not be worth as much? Could I have problems? And that's kind of how they're thinking about it when they're doing due diligence. All right, so let's talk about not touching the inventory. In general, you're going to want to limit your involvement in quality control of inventory, packaging, et cetera. So not having it shipped to your house before you're shipping to Amazon is ideal. So bad would be shipping orders to yourself for FNS SKU applications, labeling, quality control, anything like that. So if you're constantly touching the inventory, having it come in, touching it, and sending it back, that is not ideal for the same reasons we just discussed. Buyers don't want to be that involved. They have other businesses going. Maybe they have a job. Maybe they are not local, right? Maybe they're in Bali on the beach and they can't be shipping it to themselves in Bali. So they have challenges, and any buyers may have challenges that are just too difficult for them. Good would be to use a third-party service. Now, we're not selling anything here in particular. I don't care which one you use. One that Mike has come up with and has worked with before is FBAinspection.com.
Yeah, and I've actually heard feedback from multiple sellers and buyers that have used FBA inspection, and they've only had good things to say. So one example here, a lot of FBA sellers, they'll do the quality control in China. They'll hire a third-party company to do it before it's shipped, but they'll still do some things themselves. They might be inserting some labels, or they might be handling the removal orders. Even though it'll eat into your monthly net profit, usually doing something like this and getting to a point where you're not touching inventory at all will increase your multiple beyond
the difference. So remember, there are two things that really affect your valuation: net profit and multiple. generally things like this will improve your multiple beyond the loss in net profit. So yes, you take a little bit of hit in net profit, but the multiple increase is more significant than the net profit loss. And again, ultimately, you want to increase your buyer pool. You want more potential buyers, more potential people looking at your business that you can actually do business with. All right, we want to talk about people and process a little bit. One of the worst businesses, FBA businesses, will come across are the ones where they have nothing documented. And I totally understand this as a business owner myself. Sometimes you just do it, right? It's in your head. You know how to do it. You know the process, and you just kind of do it every day. You know what you need to do. But that's tough when you're selling the business, when you're trying to train a new employee on the business. Makes it really, really difficult because it's all in your head and you want them to figure it out, and it sucks because they can't, right? That's really your problem as the entrepreneur, as the person that owns the business. You have to document the process that you do on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. If you have those documented, you're gonna have a larger buyer pool. That's gonna be more legible to a buyer that goes, look, thank God, whew, this seller has their stuff documented. I know how to go through and kind of parse this out. I know the work that needs to be done. I'm comfortable I can take this over. Another good thing is trained people. If you have trained virtual assistants, maybe they spend 10 hours a week or 20 hours a week or 40 hours a week. Again, you may see a decrease in net profit because you have trained staff, but the improved multiple generally makes it worth it. People love to buy businesses where there are people involved. Maybe they have their own staff already. So they look at it as a cost savings. And this sounds horrible, but they're like, look, I can cut their people and save the extra money because I've already got staff with extra cycles available right now. Or they say, look, I want to, it's an acqui-hire. I want to buy this business because I like the skill sets their staff has. And I think that those skill sets would be applicable to my other businesses that I own. So whenever there are people involved, there's a lot of opportunity buyers see in terms of getting the business on board and kind of like bringing it together with their current business. A team just provides more flexibility and room for growth. There's more going on. There's more things we can do and more things I can do with the people that are there. All right, so those are some of the steps you can take to improve the value of your business, things you need to look at, things you need to put your buy hat on.
Hey, Justin, can I interrupt you real quick for a couple of questions I think are relevant?
Yep.
What about like brand trademarks and brand registry? Do a lot of buyers expect or require these, and how does that affect your multiple?
Sure. So I would say a lot of buyers don't specifically require it. It's definitely a plus, and it could slightly increase the multiple. Even better would be if you've run into those problems in the past, document how you've dealt with it. So let's say somebody used your listing pages. Used your pictures on your listing page, and then you trademarked them, and you reached out to Amazon, and you had the other listing taken down. Going through that experience and having that documented will make it a lot more attractive to a buyer, because now no longer it's a risk and a reason to negotiate on, because you have a process for dealing with it. Same with the brand registry. If you were able to use the brand registry effectively, or if you have something like frustration-free packaging, which gives you a little bit more control, and you've actually had a chance to use it and you've documented it, it would make the business more valuable.
Cool. And then another question a few people had was like, if you had like an external website that drove some sales to it, or an email list, how would these things kind of affect the sale?
Sure. So that's actually a really good question. We get that question all the time. The short answer is, when you look at it in terms of multiple, it would already be priced in. Now let's go through a couple examples. If you had a separate website and it was driving a significant amount of sales, that would give you a higher multiple.
Say 30% plus of your sales are coming from a separate website. That's fantastic, because it's an additional traffic and sales channel, right? So it's really, really good. What we see a lot though, we see a lot of times that FBA is supplying 95% plus their sales, and less than 5%, maybe 2% of their sales are coming from the website. That's not so helpful, right? So it's such a small percentage of the deal. And you as an entrepreneur have to weigh, like, and this is a tough one. You're like, do I spend all this effort and energy trying to get my website sales up to 20, 30%? Or do I just double down launching new products, trying to get more FBA sales? And I mean, you have to make that decision for yourself, but generally what we found is that just doubling down on FBA is the bigger win. Now, if you're really trying to build a long-term brand, it's a long-term play out of it. Getting the website up and running, I think, is really valuable. Having your own customers is more valuable than just customers on FBA. But sometimes the effort to do that is just better placed with FBA.
Cool. There's a few other questions that are kind of like more specific, and I just want to kind of like chime in here that like what I've learned now that I'm like a little bit more in tune with the buy and sell type space is like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but there's pretty much like nothing that's like not allowed. Like buying and selling businesses aren't like very specific templates or anything that adds value to a potential buyer they like nothing's not on the table. Am I right when I say that?
Yeah, everything's negotiable. This is really the Wild West too, right? So like it all comes down to negotiation. A lot of the things that we're mentioning in terms of valuation and stuff are like a really good starting point. It's good to have a framework, because then it's not just, a seller going, well, I want 1.2 million. And the buyer going, you're smoking crack. It's not even close to being worth that much. So like to have a framework on how you determine what the value is, it makes it easier and more legible for both sides to kind of make their points on what it's worth.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Justin. Just to chime in here quickly, I do a lot of the deal facilitation and negotiation at the end of the process. And while everything's on, you need to keep stuff reasonable, and that's why it's good to have some sort of template to work from.
Awesome.
Cool. So let's go through the third question. What is the process for actually selling an FBA business? I know some of the people listening on this webinar are probably like, at first they were like, what? People really want to buy these businesses? That seems weird. Why would someone buy it? Why wouldn't they just create it themselves? Well, you'd be surprised. People come from all different mindsets. Maybe they don't want to spend the time to get the product launched. They want to go with one that's already a winner. You either got lucky or you put a lot of the right work in and got a product that's making money. You got a business that's making money. They don't want to take that risk. They don't want to take that hassle. They'd rather buy something that's already working. Maybe they only work with larger businesses. So there's a whole bunch of reasons people are looking to buy. But here's the process for selling. So the first thing you need to do is you need to get an initial valuation. What's your business worth today, right? You then need to make a determination. Do I sell now? Or do I put the work in and sell in 6 months, 9 months, 12 months? And we're going to talk about how to make that decision. The third thing is you need to understand the documentation you need to prepare to sell. We're going to walk you through that. The next thing is the vetting process. You need to understand, we don't just allow anyone to list and sell their business. It's not like we take on anything at any price point. We have a very specific process we follow, and we'll walk you through that. The last one of the last pieces is negotiations. We'll talk about kind of like how you negotiate the deal, and then we'll talk about how we actually transfer FBA businesses and get sellers paid. So the first thing is the initial valuation. What is my business worth? Give me a rough estimate today. The best way to do that right now is to go to empireflippers.com/JS. That's gonna be a welcome to all Jungle Scout customers. You can click on valuation tool and it'll give you a very rough estimate for your FBA business. You're also going to get a bunch of email about potentially selling your business and more content than we've even covered in this webinar. So it'll give you a whole bunch of information about selling and potentially selling and that kind of thing. You're not going to have a URL to put in, or if it does, you can put anything, put test.com. It's a valuation tool. It's built for all different types of businesses, not just FBA businesses. So you can put in any URL, doesn't matter. And then I'll put that up again later, empireflippers.com/JS. All right, so here's the question. Now you've got an initial valuation. I'll give you a rough estimate. Maybe it'll give you it'll tell you your business is worth somewhere between $362,000 and $440,000, right? And that range will be dependent on a bunch of things we've mentioned, like how old is it, how long has it been around, what's the trajectory, that kind of thing. So now that you've got an idea, let's say on average, I know my business is worth about $420,000. How comfortable are you with that valuation? Were you expecting $2 million? Were you expecting 50,000? Are you shocked at how high or how low it is? It's a good kind of idea to kind of square those up, match how comfortable you are with what you thought you were going to get. The second thing to do is to weigh, right? Is the time and effort I'm going to put in to make the changes worth it, right? Worth the actual improvements and the changes I'm going to get out of it, right? It's going to take me maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, maybe 9 months to make some of the changes to make my business more sellable. Do I have to do it, number one? And if I do it, will I actually improve my valuation to make it worthwhile? And that's something you just have to look at, something you have to weigh. The other thing is opportunity cost, right? What could I do with that money right now? Let's say I sold it in 30, 60 days. What could I do with that money And in the next 6 months, 9 months, where could it be? Or how could I be using it? So either I take the next 6 to 9 months to improve my business and to get value out of it and then sell it, or I sell it right now for the cash that I get and put that money to work somewhere else. And you have to weigh that as well. A good point to think of for us, 90% of the businesses we sell are sold in less than 2 months. That's from submitting the business to getting paid. So there's definitely some outside of that. Sometimes they take 3 months, 4 months, even up to 6 months. But 90% are sold in less than 2 months. So it's relatively quickly. The reason that's the case is because of our vetting process. We only allow businesses we're pretty sure we have a good chance to sell, and businesses that are a good fit for our buyers.
And one really important thing that you want to keep in mind is, as you're going through the sales process, you want to keep running your business exactly as if you were not planning on selling it. So this is really important.
Yeah, the worst thing you can do when you're selling your business is like you say, look, I'm going to sell my business. You turn in all your financials and you go, thank God, I'm done. I'm done, right? And then, we're in the process of selling it and we've got a buyer and they're interested. And then we update financials for the last 30 days and you took a 40% hit because you've been chilling on the beach in Bali, sucking down Mai Tais and not doing your business, right? Like that's the worst you could do. So you need to keep running it until the minute you get paid, until your money's in the bank, that deal is not done. So we're hustling, we're making deals happen, we're closing the deal for you, but until you get paid, the deal is not done. I think that's a really important point. Let's talk about, this is the boring stuff, but it's important. Let's talk about some of the documentation you need to prepare. The first is a detailed profit and loss with cost of goods showing landed product costs. So we're going to do a month by month profit and loss over the last 12 months that show total revenue, cost of goods, all expenses, add backs, any salary you have for yourself. We're going to have that in a profit and loss spreadsheet. Second thing, we need access to your Amazon Seller Central account. We need to be able to verify your earnings and your page views. Now, we can do this without actually getting access to your Amazon Seller Central account. It's just a lot easier for us to do it that way. But you can actually give our team a walkthrough. That's another way to do it.
Yeah, if you don't want to share access, we could do a video walkthrough where we verify the numbers, you make sure everything is exactly as stated. It saves you some legwork if you provide us access, but it's not required.
I know you FBA guys and gals are super secretive about your niches. They're worried about people finding what niche you're involved in. And I tell you, we'd love to copy your niches. We're pretty busy trying to sell businesses. We don't really have that opportunity, but I totally get it. And it's very secretive space. Okay, the next thing is to answer questions about opportunities and work required. So, while we're in the process of getting your business listed, we're going to ask you questions about what you see as the opportunities, what you see are the risks, what kind of work required on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. If you answer those questions, we're going to put it all in a nice, ready-to-read, ready-to-use format for the listing page. And basically, we're going to help prepare the sales document that's going to help sell to potential buyers. If you're ready to submit, if you want to list your business, you can go to empireflippers.com/JS. Again, there's a link there to submit all of your business documentation and get you started on the process. Let's talk about the vetting process really quick. So after you submit, after you go to that link I just gave and you submit your financials, it's going to take anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks from submission to actually getting your business listed and for sale. And the reason for that is we're verifying a lot of information. We're verifying you, we're verifying your financials, your traffic, your products. We need to make sure that everything matches up. To check to make sure that what you're telling us is accurate, number one, but also to make sure the numbers don't mismatch, right? So if you're saying on the profit and loss that you made this much per month, and then we're saying in the listing page or somewhere else that you made a different amount per month, that's going to be a turnoff for buyers. They're going to see this disconnect and be like, I don't know which is true, but I'm not even going to bother because they can't get their numbers together. So a lot of it has to do with just making sure that we're accurate, that everything's been verified and everything is ready to go in a nice, pretty pre-packaged format for buyers. And we do all that for you. So we package all that information. We ask you a bunch of questions. We get your documentation, and then we put it all together for you. Oftentimes, especially with FBA businesses, we'll do a seller interview. So our content manager will get in contact with you and do an interview where we ask you detailed questions about the business. And buyers love this. They love to hear from the entrepreneur, from the creator themselves, answers to these kinds of questions: why they got started, how they got started, what their trajectory was like, how exciting it was for them. They love to hear this. We also put together social media campaigns to help promote your business to our audience. We have a pretty wide-ranging audience through our blog, 50, 60,000 visitors a month. We have a very popular podcast on iTunes, and we help promote your business that way as well. All right, so after we've vetted the business, we've listed it, we're gonna go into the negotiation process. With us, your information isn't public. So you're not listing the exact product. We're not putting your product page on the internet for people to view. It is all behind the scenes, right? So the only people that see that information are depositors and VIPs.
Yeah, we'll have some public information on your listing. We'll give them.
It's in the sports niche. How many SKUs you have, the estimated or like a range, price range.
What's the estimated selling price? What's the approximate BSR? Is it oversized? Is it not? So we'll give people enough information to decide if this is something they're interested in. But then we ask them to place a deposit.
So what a depositor is, it's to keep the kid in his mom's basement from reviewing all your niches and just copying them, right? So if it's a $100,000 business and they have to put $5,000, $6,000 up, the fact of the matter is most people, when they're asked for, like, it's a risk for them to put the money up, even on a credit card, even through a wire, whatever, it's a risk. So if they're looking to scam or they're looking to copy, they're less interested in putting themselves out there to do something like that. We also have VIPs. These are people that have purchased with us before, that have large purchases, that are legitimate in all the business they do, that will share the information with as well. But it's relatively limited, and it's limited to just depositors and VIPs for that reason, because a lot of people don't want their niche shared with thousands and thousands of people going to view that listing.
And really, another thing that it accomplishes, it's a bit of a filter. So this way, you're not getting questions from dozens and dozens of buyers that are actually not planning and moving forward. This filters out most of the potential tire kickers.
Yep. And in terms of initial questions, we deal with a lot of those because we've already asked of you. So we have a lot of the questions already answered. We can answer that, or our staff can answer that, our support team, from initial depositors, initial VIPs. So some of them they'll end up filtering down to you. Some of them we're able to catch and answer before they even get to you. And the idea is just to filter out the tire kickers. Now, when they start asking more detailed information, or they start showing signs like buyer interest signs, what we'll generally do is set up a buyer-seller call. And here's, Joe and Mike can talk a little bit more about this. I'll just mention what will happen is you as a seller will be contacted and said, look, we've got a potential buyer. We'll set up a date and time that everyone can get on the call. So it'll be one of our team, either Mike or Joe, you, and the buyer. You'll then get a prep call where they'll call you beforehand. They'll explain to you who the buyer is, where they're coming from, what they're looking for, some of the things they've mentioned. So you have a pretty good understanding who the buyer is. Then you'll go through a guided call. Either Mike or Joe will guide you through the call and kind of do some of the sales tactics. We'll kind of draw the buyer in to see how interested they are, and to also help guide you. Once that buyer-seller call is done, there's then a post buyer-seller call follow-up. So Mike or Joe will call you back and say, look, here's where I think we did well. Here's what I think we should expect in terms of an offer. Here's where I think they stand. So you get like a really in-depth and kind of detailed guide through the process, which I think is really unique to us. A lot of times, like, hey, I've got a potential buyer for you, set up a call, good luck, right? Where we don't do that. We actually walk you and step you through the process from start to finish.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite parts of the whole process, Justin. I love this call. I really look forward to them. I do them a lot. And, I think it's important to point out that we take a very active sort of approach to these calls. And, other brokers do it differently, but we feel like, you probably as a business owner are only going to sell a business a couple of times in your life. And we as the experts can help a lot there, because this is the kind of penultimate sort of area where you're going to present your business, and it will lead to a good offer and negotiation if handled correctly.
This is our bread and butter. I mean, it comes right down to it. This is what we do all the time, and most people don't sell their businesses all the time. So, let us kind of walk these buyers through it. The buyers, especially buyers that are repeat buyers of us, they know how we work. They know how the deal works, and they're comfortable with it too. The last thing I'll mention in negotiation is we have a non-exclusive due diligence. So sometimes there are situations, not with us, but there are other times where a buyer will ask you, they'll say, I want 3 months exclusivity. So it means you're entering into a 3-month kind of due diligence period where you can't show the business to anyone else. they've locked you into this, buyer's locked you into this contract, and they can try to wear you down, right? So they can try to wear you down price, say, oh, it's not really worth this much, or you made 10% less last month, I want to pay less for the business. And they're exclusive. You're exclusive with them during that period. It can get to the point where you're just like, okay, sure, I'll sell for 20% less, right? You're done with it. We don't have that. So we keep our buyers on the hook, right? So if you want it, you better send the money and you better make this deal happen now. So we put pressure on the buyers. Buyers know this, and so they know that they have to move, they have to act with us, which is why we're able to sell businesses relatively quickly and keep those buyers, on their toes.
So during the due diligence process, you'll typically have multiple buyers all doing due diligence at the same time, looking at your business. And one other thing to add here, as offers start coming in, we'll advise you on those offers. So we'll give you some comparable sales that we've done in the past, and we'll advise you on what you should do, if you should counter with a higher offer, if you should accept it, or if you should outright reject it.
And there's a whole bunch more when it comes to this, like in terms of what kind of offers you should accept, when you should accept them, what an earn-out looks like, seller retained equity. There's all these different kind of structures. And we get into that in our podcast and some of the content. If you fill out the valuation tool, you're going to get some emails about things like that. Let's move into the business transfer and payout. So let's say that we've come to an agreement, negotiations are finished. We've basically got ourselves a deal. We actually help with contracts and legal agreements. A lot of times for like an $80,000 FBA business, there's really no contract or very little contract, if anything at all. It's pretty straightforward. The wire comes in, we transfer the business, we transfer you your money, and that's it. But on the larger deals, $500,000 plus, generally there's some kind of contracts. And really the contracts are just for clarity. It becomes difficult, from the buyer in, let's say there's an American in Shanghai buying from an Indonesian that's located in the Philippines. Like, what jurisdiction are you under? Like, it's real messy. But for the larger businesses, it can be worth it, and which is why we use contracts and legal agreements.
Do they usually ask for a non-compete or agree not to sell in that particular niche or product?
Yeah, standard 3 years. It can be. We've seen as low as a year, seen as high as 5 years. But
it's usually negotiated up front, and the non-competes are usually very, very specific. So, for example, for an FBA business,
it's not like no sports equipment. It's like
no
tennis.
paddles.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool.
When you're transferring the business, there are two ways to do it. You can either transfer the seller account, or you can transfer listing page control.
Yeah, this is actually a very common question that we get from FBA sellers. So, like Justin said, there's two ways of doing this. The first and easier one is we reach out to Amazon directly and get permission from them to transfer the seller account. In that case, we simply change out the owner and contact information. We change out the EIN. We change out the bank and financial details.
So the question is, does Amazon allow you to sell your FBA business? The clear and direct answer is yes.
Despite clearly stating in the terms of service that Amazon seller central accounts cannot be transferred, if you reach out to them, sometimes they'll give you permission for it to be transferred.
Businesses can be sold, yeah.
Businesses can be sold. However, if that doesn't work, or if the seller wants to keep control of their Amazon account,
of other products,
maybe they have multiple products, or for whatever other reason, we can transfer control of the listing page. And we've done this maybe 9 or 10, probably 8 or 9 times in the last 6 months here. And we have an entire process that works very well. And during this entire transfer process, the product will not lose rankings and will not lose sales. And we have a way of doing
that.
This
takes a little longer. So I say it takes 1 to 5 weeks to transfer the accounts. 5 weeks would be more like listing page control. Your seller account can generally be a little bit faster. So it could take 1 to 5 weeks. This is longer than like an Amazon affiliate site or AdSense sites, which we sell all different types of online businesses. This one can take a little bit longer just because of the product and inventory issues that can come into play.
And I would say typically for larger businesses, you will have to turn over the Amazon account. So $1 million business, you'll probably have to turn over the seller central account.
$60,000 FBA product, probably not.
Probably not.
All right. In terms of payouts, it's time to get you paid, right? You transferred everything, business is done, we're holding the money. When you send the money, we can wire it. We can wire it onshore, offshore. We can send it via Bitcoin, or actually pay out via Bitcoin. We've got, and maybe we can talk about some other time, we've got some crazy payout stories. We're on some terrorist watch list. I'm absolutely certain of it. Mike's laughing, but I'm serious. We paid out this guy, totally legitimate seller in in Pakistan. And what was the company or the agency that contacted us, Joe?
The Office of Financial Services or something like that. Yeah.
Foreign Asset Control Office. And like the guy couldn't pick up his money. And we're like, no, we actually owe him the money. This isn't like some ISIS plotting thing. No. Like it's a website. And so it's like this crazy, horrible thing where the guy couldn't get his money. We got him his money eventually. So even if you're in the mountains of Pakistan, with the freedom fighters, we can pay you, I think, most of the time.
Yeah. We definitely get money anywhere in the world. We've even sent money to Nigeria, which was also...
that was an interesting one. The bank was like, are you sure there's no prince involved there? What's the deal here? No princes.
So it's not a problem for us to get money anywhere. Justin, I noticed in chat there's a lot of questions about our fees. I don't know if we're going to get to that, but they're...
Yeah. I'll get into that. Last thing I'll mention here is that the seller is responsible for tax reporting. That's not on us. That's on you. So I don't know if that's a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Basically, it's your responsibility to do with your taxes as you will. Talk to your tax professional.
So yeah, we don't file 1099s. We don't report the income to the IRS. You should definitely do that, but consult your tax advisor for a professional opinion.
Again, last thing, if you want to see kind of like all the stuff we talked about, we also have the slides there. You can submit your business. You can go to the valuation tool to get a rough estimate. Go to empireflippers.com/JS, and you'll get all the information you need that we talked about here. Now, let's get into some questions. I have been viewing it because I had it full screen. But let's talk a little bit about...
Let you know, I've been watching over them. One was the fee, and I will say you guys actually do like a lot more than I thought as far as like helping out the buyer. I thought like the main advantage is like using a broker was because they had a whole bunch of buyers, to sell your business to. But you guys actually do a lot more than that.
I think deal flow, like there are a whole bunch of buyers. We've got a pretty wide audience. There's a lot of work that we do in terms of transferring the business. I think there are a lot of work we do in terms of the negotiations where I think are really important because it's like, and this is that born out of necessity because a lot of times people don't sell their business or they're not used to it. So like, why don't we do it since we do it all the time? Like we're going to be better at it than they are. We know our buyers better than they do. We know the people that we have buyers that we work with regularly. Like, why don't we handle that for them? We get more deals done, right?
Yeah,
and that's our goal is to get the deal done.
And Greg,
right?
I think what your aspect, your idea of this traditional business broker comes from is this brick and mortar area where, you have this guy with his cigar in kind of an office space, up in New York or Chicago, and he's putting deals together on the phone, and he basically has a Rolodex and he puts people together. And other than that, he doesn't really do much. And for online businesses, there's a lot of other stuff that needs to be done. We have a staff that helps facilitate the transfer. And that's why our fees are generally at the higher end of the market for sure. We do charge a full 15%. And that's, more than some of the other brokers charge, but we feel that what we do and the service we provide is full service, and therefore
to be clear, so like the listing fee is normally $297. So the first time you list your business with us is $297, and that's really just a buffer to kind of keep the crappy businesses out. With Jungle Scout in particular, we're going to waive that listing fee. So Jungle Scout customers are going to be able to get a free listing with us, and they can go to that page and they'll be able to submit their business for free. And in terms of ultimate sales price, we get 15% of whatever the sales price is. So we only get paid on this deal when you get paid, right? And we get paid based on the value we get. So if we get you more money, we make more money. So it's in our interest to get you the most amount of money, the quickest amount of time. Now, it's not always the case that the broker is aligned with the seller. Most of the time we are, but keep in mind that our goal is to get the deal done. Right? Like if we got you 10% less than the deal, but we still get the deal done, that's better for us. We want to keep pushing deals through. So our goal is to get you in front of buyers, get the deal sold, and keep like pushing the deal to go through. So if it's close, we may push you a little more a little harder and you're like, well, but I want to make a little bit more. We're like, no, this is a good deal. You should take it. So that's the only time you'll see that brokers aren't, and this is being totally transparent. That's the only time you see like maybe some misalignment, but that's because you have to know the broker's role, and the broker's role is to close the deal.
And I think the thing to note there, Justin, is like you said earlier in the presentation, our listing prices tend to be very accurate, unlike places where they give you a very high valuation and then shoot you lowball offers. We tend to sell very close or at our list price, which, is one of the reasons.
You're naming names here, Joe. What are we talking about? Who are we talking about here? What are we doing? Who are we talking about here?
I'm not trying to call anybody out, but you know what I mean.
To answer some questions, have you ever sold a supplement business? Yes, we sold a supplement FBA business. Go through this really quickly.
Greg, do you want to pick out the questions, or we'll just go through them?
Yeah, sure. One of the earlier ones that we haven't gotten to yet was: does this refer only to private label businesses, or can you also sell businesses who are sourcing from wholesalers and other sources?
So majority of the businesses that we've sold so far have been private label businesses. Actually, all of them have been private label businesses. Right now, we currently have a branded business for sale, and we've had some interest in it. Typically, private label is easier to sell. And the reason for that is it's less competitive, from a buyer's perspective. There's less risk. We are open to selling a business that sells branded products. There has to be some kind of barrier to entry from competitors. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that answers it. And just to kind of further iterate on that, guys, like if you've created a system that generates money, it's generally something like these guys can sell, like an FBA business or a website that generates money. There's gonna be all kinds of like different scenarios with different businesses. But that's what I was saying earlier, that like I've learned that there's no like hard and fast rules for selling these businesses. If you've made a good system that generates money for people, it's an asset that people are willing to buy.
Yeah, one of the things that I think FBA builders they don't realize is they get nervous about selling their business because they're like, why the hell would I sell my golden goose? Like I made this business, I have this golden goose. There's no way I'm selling it. That's the magic. But what they miss or they fail, and you know this, Greg, is it's being able to create those FBA businesses that's your golden goose, right? The FBA businesses themselves are the eggs. You can sell the eggs all day long, right? Those are the assets. So the golden goose are the skill sets and the abilities you've put together in terms of building these FBA businesses from nothing to profitability. Like if you can do that all day long, you can sell the eggs all day long.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I guess if you could sell one business, get the cash, and then from there it's easy to generate a new one, and that could be a whole business model itself.
We have a lot of sellers that do that work their way up. They start out with a $20,000 business, then they use that money to create a $60,000 business, use that money to create $120,000, and they just keep working their way up the ladder.
Or they keep running like a larger business. They're like the early stage entrepreneurs. They like the first 2 years of business. They hate the scaling part. They like getting up to speed and making it work, and then they get bored with it, right? And they start chasing a new niche, whatever. So like that can be a weakness if you're trying to scale a long-term business, but it can be a strength if you're flipping businesses. You're like, look, I'll put in 2 years worth of work, and when I get bored with it, I'll sell it and start over, right? And we have people that do that over and over again.
Awesome. Great. I think we've answered most of the questions here. I apologize if there's any that we did skip. I think we are right at a few minutes over an hour, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. But guys, there will be a replay of this posted on YouTube. We'll send out the link for that to everyone who registered for this. And we're also going to write it up as a blog post in a recap. And we'll also send you a link to that when it's ready. So yeah, if you are interested in selling your business, that link one more time is empireflippers.com/JS. And I really appreciate everyone who joined us. Nick just says he has a business listed with you right now.
Awesome, Nick. Appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, Nick, thank you.
All right, guys. Justin, Joe, Mike, guys, appreciate you guys coming on. Take care.
All right. Take care.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.